to continue from the previous one about attacks, I wanted to cover a little bit of the, I guess, the magic spell one that I created. Um, Previously, to do spells was some big convoluted mess that didn't really work well or and was not really usable. Um, Especially for like doing projectiles, this one was a fun one to set up because I mean it works. I know a little bit more about how these calculations and objects work now to where I can actually load in. If I can go over to the spell real quick, this animation is part of data files, skills. Now that's might as well open that one too. I'm going to show that one later. Let's see. Spell. Alright, so this one is a projectile spell. I have it set up to where it will come in, you can, same thing, you can configure the level that the move is learned at. You can come in here and change how AI will use it. Since I have no AI that dynamically uses it, I don't have anything set up here. I have the damage particle as well as the target sound for that. And pretty much what I do in here is I'm using just this animation to conjure like the little magic faded, the magic circle that's on the ground. Same thing for, like I said, on the recovery of the spell, it will come in and see if there's another attack to do. With this line-based spell, I actually come in. I will look at the current object. I will grab I will generate a projectile after grabbing the mesh and getting the actual projectile point, which is actually mounted on the hand. So that way, wherever the hand is, that's going to be the point of reference for the casting of the spell. I get its location to spawn the actual particle from, and I apply a forward velocity depending on where the enemy target is and the hand itself, and use that as initial velocity to launch the projectile at the target. One thing I also have in here is I actually turned on homing, which when you use that with a projectile, even if it misses, depending on the strength of the homing, it's going to try to circle around and hit the target, which created some actually interesting effects because I never thought about the enemy moving out the way as you're trying to attack them. I thought the homing would be fast enough to just curve and hit the target itself while it's moving, but sometimes it goes around and spins around the target until it hits dead on, which kind of looks cool. I mean, there's some things to tweak there, but in general, it's a process that works for trying to do projectile magics. Mind you, I wanted to add this class projectile to the actual spell as, another one of the parameters here to be able to put, hey, I want to do this projectile or that projectile. But for right now, I just left it in the actual callback. But, modular usage wise, that's not a good idea because what if I wanted to do ice instead of fire? Same kind of situation. Any kind of projectile I want to do would have to be hard coded within another turn-based effect. And if I wanted to change projectile types, I would have to pretty much create a whole new object. So that's one thing I'm looking to change with this. Again, this was something I tried to make it at the end run for trying to get this out. There was more stuff I wanted to do, especially with the trying to make the Bowsette summon, but I wasn't able to get there. So this isn't the cleanest presentation of this, but it does indeed work. So I can launch it, I can set the homing magnitude, and then I can set the actual particle damage. And similar to how I had it before in the other system, what I would do is I would spawn a projectile target and then set its source information and things like that. But there was so much confusion on how can I determine if this is the right object or who my target is. I've cleaned up some of that stuff inside the projectile data a little bit, so that way you can actually set your configurations for this attack and this magic attack within here. And then when it actually collides with the target, it'll set off this little projection scan to see what enemy targets are in the area, how much radius this is supposed to do, what kind of damage radius is supposed to calculate for in size, how much damage it should apply to all the targets, and then execute everything from there going forward. It also keeps track of source target a little bit easier than the other one. I think in the other one that I had before, you could actually lose the source target depending on the source target dying, and then you wouldn't be able to get that damage off. But this still works in the way that I have death being handled, so that at least is working well currently. One thing I wanted to do as well with this type of setup is to be able to call out locations for damage. So say if this move was for some reason some kind of like effect where I'm like clenching my fist and I want an ice pillar to like launch out of the ground, I wanted to have a node to where I can say, hey, this is an attack node and this is going to be an attack node that spawns something, and when it spawns something, that effect is going to do a ground damage within a certain area of effect at either a certain amount of distance in front of me, so that way is a hard coded ranged attack, so any enemy in that area can get punched with it. Or I can set it up to where I can say, hey, instead of just using the location for this, whatever my target is, if I'm doing a single target magic attack, then no matter where the enemy is, use this trigger to spawn this effect directly beneath the feet of my target. Something like that. So that way I can get some kind of like varied use of it. So like even if I'm doing it in preview, I can switch it over to be, a hard-coded 500 centimeters in front of me, or meters, whichever one they're using here. 500 centimeters in front of me, and then spawn that ice particle to do a big giant hit, so that way I can see it in persona and I can see how the effect is going to look with the animation going on. Or if for some reason it's like lightning, I have another one that says, hey, spawn this particle from the sky and then do this. So if it's lightning, the lightning particle, if the lightning particle effect or damage object from it would actually do a projectile towards the ground. So it can be like for lightning, or I can throw a fireball down for fire, just something that's dynamically configurable. In general, I like playing around with these and different ideas of how I can create just all these like modular little pieces to the system to be able to make more complicated things with less in general. At least it gives me like a good way of going forward with trying to think of like how to get all of this little thing working within the RPG environment. The other spell, let me see if I even have that in here. That is not it. That's not it. There we go. Let's see, where's the montage? There we go. So with this one, this is pretty basic, and yeah, it's just basic. There's nothing special about this one, but it does use a different turn-based move, which is turn-based ranged line hit. And pretty much what it does is within the attack radius of this fire, it will damage everything within the area. Similar to the other line hit, except for this one damages per tick interval. So that's where you may have to do this and say, hey, this is a little bit too powerful, let me tweak the damage down like I show right here. I actually tweaked the damage down to a 0.05 of the base attack power because it was so many frames, so much damage per frame and things like that. It just had to be cranked down a little bit because it was just way too overpowered, especially at 100% magic damage per tick. It was just overpowered in general. But this is another example of what you can do. And even with this one's actually set up properly with the on the recovery to be able to detect the next action move in the action list. I think that's about as much as I can cover for the magic. Hopefully that'll help some other people get their other stuff set up. Thank you.